Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the frantic and maniacal efforts amongst the Western world, the globalist-funded exercise to replace white characters, key white characters in all novels and stories, culturally rich stories of Western culture, and also to replace white people in history. Now, in some places, in say parts of the United States, there were black people there, so it's not unusual in stories that are written by Samuel Langhorne Clemens, Mark Twain, to see black characters in there, although they would have been slaves or servants or something like that. But in places like Britain, where there was maybe one black person for every 50,000 of the population, and even those would be transients, like people working on merchant ships that maybe were, like in Tiger Bay out in the area of Wales, where they may be in temporary lodgings until the next ship, if that shipping line came along, and then they'd get on that ship. So the presence of black people was about zip. It was hardly anybody, and yet the globalists and the globalist controlled institutions are forcing black and brown characters into every British novel, the Charles Dickens novels and the Emily Bronte novels and so on. So any novel that's a British cultural icon is being directly assaulted and purposefully assaulted and torn to pieces by inserting of, again, black, brown and subcontinent, Indian subcontinent characters into the story, which is absurd. Now, this is sort of going on all over, including historical things, and the amount of lies, and I mean lies, grotesque untruths, that are being told by the globalist control institutions to pretend that somewhere like Western Europe and Britain has always been black and always been brown and this sort of thing, which is utter and complete and total nonsense. But I had a look at, sort of looking at, and again, I've done a vast amount of business travel, so I couldn't recall a single time when I saw a white character being inserted into a Chinese production of some Chinese, historical drama. Now, it could be, I remember watching a Chinese movie. I think it was from the 1880s, 1890s, and they had some visiting. I think it was an American troupe of prize fighters and circus performers and things like that. So they had that in there, but that was strictly in context, and they could do that if they wanted to in historical novels. In Britain, where, assuming it was part of the story originally, where they could have a visiting delegation from Africa or from I don't know, India or China, and that would all be fine. But no, they're inserting it and saying that these characters are as much English as anyone else, and it's always been so. It's always been a multicultural society with whites in the minority, and anyone back then who disagreed with it or had a problem with it is a racist, fascist, Nazi, probably. So, but is it happening on the other side? I can't see it. The Chinese are not inserting white characters into their historical. The emperors of the Ming Dynasty aren't recast as white people. The great Zulu kings aren't recast as white people. I can't go anywhere. The great shoguns of Japan aren't recast as white people, and so on and so forth. Nor any of the characters around them. So it's only happening in white countries. No other race, no other place in the world, nowhere else on the planet is happening. only in white countries. Only white people are being forced, and I do mean forced to accept this diversity, this brainwashing, these lies, these grotesque untruths, one after the other. Now, there's a few arguments that support this. Some people say, well, hey, Billy Bob, what's your problem? The Charles Dickens novel, it's a novel. It's not real. It didn't happen. It's not a historical thing. Now, when it is historical, then they switch the argument around and say, well, look, it doesn't matter. We have to serve the community that we represent. And so it's okay if we do that, and so on. So they jump around with their arguments and are unconvincing, I think, in all of them. But let's come back to the core here of the Charles Dickens novels as just a case in point. They're not factual. They are novels. They're from the imagination of Charles Dickens, and therefore, given they're not real, we can do whatever we want to them. We can cast a spaceman from outer space. We can cast creatures from the Black Lagoon. We can do whatever we want to it. It doesn't matter. Now, I don't mind that. If you sense, okay, well, then it's no longer David Copperfield in that case. Now, if you want to change it to something else, that's fine. And you want to say, well, it's not David Copperfield anymore. We've retold the story. We've changed the actors. We've changed a lot of things about it. So it's not David Copperfield. So don't use the draw card of David Copperfield and then insert your propaganda without telling people. Or if you want to say, well, this is a story of David Copperfield told from the point of view of extreme left-wing activists, mostly black lesbians who hate white men, and hate white society, and hate Western society, and we're now telling the story how we think it should be in our fantasy of the world. Okay, that's fine too. Give that explanation around it. But then they argue, well, if we do that, no one will come and watch it, or no one will see it, no one will tune into it on television or something. Well, that's the risk you take. If you want to retell the story and recast it and recast the actors and change it all so they're these evil white supremacists who are all Hitler and all these good, just and wonderful black and brown people, well, then okay, fine, but call it something else. It's no longer David Copperfield at that point. So don't do the deceitful thing of pretending it is, while in fact having changed the story and all its central and key details, or many of its central and key details. Now, the other aspect of it that the activists sort of say, well, why should you care? Why would you give a shit one way or another? And my response is, well, why do you give a shit one way or another? If you don't give a shit, just leave the story as it was told by Charles Dickens. Just leave it alone. Do a good quality script and great acting and great period costumes and so on, mid 1800s, and then just leave it at that. Oh no, we have a right to change it because we're fighting back against white supremacy. We're fighting back against Hitler. So all right, then create your own story. Then could create a black lesbian version of David Copperfield, or Great Expectations, or Bleak House, or Oliver Twist, or any of the Dickens novels. Create your own version where there's no white people in it at all, and there's only black lesbians starring in it. Do that. Oh, well, again, you see, no one will come to see it. Well, okay, then call it something. Can we come back to the central point? If you want to use Oliver Twist or David Copperfield, leave it as it is. If you want to change it to something else, you maybe have the sort of the basics of the story there, but you want to have the black lesbians and there's all Hitlers marching around and there's the black lesbians bringing them to book for their wickedness, then call it something else. But no one will come to see it. Well, then that's the risk you take. If your drama is a good quality drama and the message is something people want to hear, they'll come to watch it. Have a black-only theatre that does David Copperfield. There's no white actors, no white directors, no white producers. You can just take all the white money, of course. Take that, but have only black people. And I don't mind that if that's what you want to do. That's okay with me. The consumer can then make their choice if they want to come and see it. But the argument then comes back, so, well, black people don't go to see theatre, so that won't work. And white people won't go to see it because it's all black production, which means all white people are Hitler. So, okay, now then the argument sort of swings back the other way, and then it's asserted that we don't have to change how black people behave. This is we, the activists. We have to change how white people behave. We have to force white people to accept and embrace and enjoy the complete destruction and bastardization of their own history, to appreciate and enjoy piss poor scripts and acting as we tear apart their cultural iconic novels and their history. We have to force white people, have to get them to kneel down and accept it. But, it's not bit-like. In fact, it is really that scene in the novel 1984, written by George Orwell, which more and more looks like it was an instruction manual rather than a warning about the dystopian future, where the head goon, he's torturing the guy, and he's saying, "How many fingers am I holding up?" And it's 4 fingers, but he has to say 5. So if we're, if the number 4 is in front of you, but we say it's 5, then it's 5. The depiction of reality that we say you must have, and we will hurt you, we will punish you if you don't agree to accept this perversion. And that's really what's happening with the history. So when they insert the proverbial black lesbian all across the Charles Dickens novels, if you don't like it or complain about it or think, well, it doesn't really work, it's very heavy-handed, the silliness we're engaging in, then you're a fucking Nazi, you are Hitler. And this is the sort of direction they take, which is again very much in the line of this ideological brainwashing crap that George Orwell warned us about in 1984, the novel. So I think they should do a recasting of 1984, the novel, where all the bad people, all the ideological oppressors are all black lesbians. And then maybe you would even get an extra touch of reality in the modern day. But again, nowhere in the world, no other race of people, no other country, no other group of people is having this done to them. Only white people are having to suffer this. And just ponder that, if you will. You've been a Tacitus debate, your pushback channel, and thank you for listening.